So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today what we're going to do is discuss the reign of Philip II. Philip II can be viewed as our first absolute monarch. He can also be viewed as a member of these wars of religion during the period of the Counter-Reformation and the force of Catholicism. And he can also be viewed as just a sort of an auxiliary figure of this time of a Spanish Golden Age, which after his reign sort of once again sort of falls back away. So it's sort of the peak of Spanish power and prominence in Europe. Throughout history. We really are not going to focus on Spain beyond Philip II for much of its history from now on. So there's a significance there to him too. Where I want to pick up with the story of Philip II is actually with his father, Charles V. So Charles V, as we know, inherited a huge empire of land, including Spain, and he ends up abdicating the throne to his son, as well as to his brother, Ferdinand. So his son is going to be inheriting Spain, the Spanish Netherlands, as well as southern Italy, which was under the rule of Spain, along with the New World. And his brother Ferdinand is going to inherit the Holy Roman Empire's claims, Austria and Hungary. This painting is called The Assets and Liabilities of Empire, and what you're seeing is Charles V abdicating in Brussels shortly after the Peace of Augsburg, where he's allowing the different religions to reign, the different princes to choose between Lutheranism and Roman Catholicism in the Holy Roman Empire. The Peace of Augsburg was viewed as both a religious and political defeat. Each state received the liberty to be Lutheran or Catholic. However, it set up a provision saying that if you were a bishop and you decide that you want to convert to Lutheranism, you can't take the land that you had under your control as bishop with you. So there was that limitation for the Catholic Church. But really, what it's viewed in terms of history, the Peace of Augsburg is viewed as a step towards the disintegration of Germany. You know, it will never be as united again, and as we mentioned already, it's sort of one step towards that German particularism. In this painting, what you're seeing is that abdication. In the middle is Charles V seated on the throne, and he's flanked by his successors Ferdinand on the left and Philip II on the right. In front of Philip is the personification of the different territories of the empire with their banners, and there they are, they're kneeling down. And then we have on the left is Neptune, and he's riding a seahorse-drawn triumphal chariot. So you can sort of see him riding his chariot of sorts with his trident there, and he's accompanied by mermen, mermaids, and on the chariot there's a globe and two columns, and you can see one of the columns has like a banner on it, and it says Plus Ultra, further beyond, which is the saying of Spain. And so you're seeing here sort of this image of the control in the vast empire of Charles V, and how all parts of the world, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, are offering tribute to this great Habsburg family and this Habsburg reign. And Philip II is going to take up the role of his father, and then also his great-grandparents, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, as being the Catholic monarch, and really trying to solidify his rule. So Philip II had a particular concept of monarchy. Philip II is going to be ruling once again the Spanish kingdoms. He'll also inherit Portugal, the 17 provinces of the Netherlands, which now is the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, as well as the Free Country of Burgundy, which is in the middle of France, and Milan in northern Italy, and Naples. Now, Philip II had a particular concept of monarchy. And this concept, these theories behind monarchy are helping set up our study in the future of absolutism and absolute monarchs. He's a little bit early to be identified as an absolute monarch, and he's a little late to be one of the new monarchs. So he's this in-between phase, and he's transitioning us towards that absolute monarch model, which is just even more power than the new monarchs. So with his concept of monarchy, he's seeking to enforce absolute government and strict conformity to Catholicism to sort of create a unified force, right, to unite everyone. To use this united force then would help make Spain a dominant power in Europe. And then also to use the Spanish military as God's instrument for the restoration of Catholic unity to Western Europe under the Roman Catholic Church. This is sometimes viewed as confessional absolutism, where the king is really preoccupied with the religious uniformity, with the notion that the king's religion is religion of the state. This is what marks Philip II as different from an absolute monarch. Philip II is going to be centralizing power in order to restore the Catholic Church as a part of the Catholic Reformation. Later on, when we view the later absolutists, they're going to be using the church as a tool for themselves to increase power. So there's a bit of a role reversal here. Some of the examples of where Philip II is going to be trying to promote the Catholic identity. One is that Camino de Santiago and Santiago de Compostela. It's this old medieval pilgrimage that was very popular, only second to Rome in terms of medieval life. And Philip II, as he's acquiring more and more wealth from his new world, from the acquisition of gold and silver, will invest heavily in building grand cathedrals and grand symbols of the Catholic might. And so you can see that this cathedral has a very Baroque style to it, that ornate sort of pieces. The cathedral had previously existed, but what Philip II had done is like pushed on these different layers of sort of ornate fixtures on top of it. I'll show you the interior to give you another sense. Here's the interior of that cathedral, and so you can see the old stone and the simple archway. That's Romanesque. That would have been from the medieval times. But do you see where the organ is sort of jutting out, and those big brass what are those called? The organ pieces are sticking out, and then all of that gold that's just sort of clamped on, that's that Baroque ornament that Philip II is adding. He's investing heavily within his Catholic Church. Just as a cool tidbit, when you visit the Cathedral of Santiago, they have this massive incenser. So normally with incenser, you can just have one person sort of hold in the hand and then swing around. This one requires 7 different people to be pulling upward, and then it goes throughout the entire church. It sort of swings across the church, and it said because the pilgrims smell so much as they're arriving that they needed a bigger incenser to sort of mask their odors as they're hiking throughout the countryside. But it's just another example. This is all silver, this wealth that's sort of coming in. Philip II's palace is another example of how he's both centralizing control but using it to strengthen the church rather than using it to strengthen his own control. He builds his palace, Escorial, in Madrid. He moves the capital of Spanish power to Madrid, whereas before it was in Toledo. And that's symbolic of really showing the unification of Spain. Toledo was the traditional capital of Aragon, so now he's moving it away from there, instead centering his power in Madrid. This palace, Escorial, is both palace but also monastery. It is a place for study, it's a place for priests. And so we're seeing, on one hand, we're seeing it both being the center of political industry, and the Cortes system gets set up here, while it's also a place of prayer, of study, of monks being able to become more involved in their church. And so here is another scene from that. This is the Pantheon of Kings and Queens. And the kings are going to be buried on one side, queens on the other. There's only one exception here. This is within the Escorial, where you have Queen Isabella II is going to actually be buried on the side of the kings, because she was ruling as a queen outright, not through marriage. So she herself had this power. So some of the political practices of Philip II, religious unity in his eyes was really closely related to the establishment of his absolutism. Thus, he saw himself as an instrument of God's will. He's going to be continuing Charles V's policies of weakening the court system, trying to exclude the nobility from the government in any way. Philip is going to set up a centralized bureaucracy where offices are going to be held by those of lower rank, and those offices are totally dependent upon the throne. So he's maintaining a really close supervision of them, really monitoring every decision, and because of that, it's actually a very slow, inefficient government system. Like it's not able to get very much done because he insists upon viewing and supervising every single piece. So it's not a super efficient government. Instead, it's one where he closely monitors everything. And that's one marker of his sort of centralized control. In terms of religion, he's really using religious belief as a way of increasing his subjects' loyalty. He's really trying to eradicate any heresy within Spain by renewing the Inquisition, and really emphasizes an Orthodox Catholicism as a way of having political unity. He's in 1569, there's actually going to be a revolt of Moriscos, people who were converts from Islamic faith or Jewish faith, as well as people from the southern region of Spain who were just resistant to these increased supervisal roles of Philip II. And that crush of these Moors, as he'll call it, was viewed as an extension of the Reconquista and a reestablishment of Catholic faith. Once again, cementing that identity that he embraced. The Spanish army under Philip II is going to be increased and trained further to reduce any kind of challenge to Orthodox Catholicism abroad. And so one of Philip II's most famous achievements is defeating at the Battle of Lepanto the Ottoman Empire at this big battle. And that was a battle not on his borders, but really to help defend against the siege of Vienna. And so Philip II is using his Catholic identity as a protector of the Catholic faith to intervene on foreign affairs as well. And so this extreme concentration on religion is going to mean that the highest prestige in Spanish society is not going to be in the secular world, but instead in joining in the church services, which also, once again, in the long run is going to be hurting Spain, because rather than investing in new businesses or even increasing its military might, the more secular economic political pursuits are going to be shunned, and people are instead going to enter the churchhood and that society. Economically, Spain is going to become very dependent on its New World wealth, the gold and silver. The challenge is the wealth that he accumulates is really used to pay the debts to different bankers. And these banks are going to be based in Germany and as well as in Italy. And that money that he's using, that he's taking out, is used to fund his religious crusades. So the money is constantly leaving Spain. It's not getting invested in Spain. These religious wars are increasing the number of minor aristocrats and nobles who are going to be saying, oh, well, I'm a noble, I'm a chevalier, I'm a don, I'm a hidalgo, therefore I don't need to work. And so within Spain, there's this level of, if you have a title, if you achieve a title through either war or through acquiring land, you're not going to then invest in anything, you're not going to build anything. So the money just continuously is going to be flowing out of Spain, and even lower classes, they're striving to not have to work. That's the goal in this culture of Spain, is to be able to have sort of a disdain for work, and it's a means to ultimately one day not need to work. Um, with this system is going to create a lot of economic difficulties. There's going to be a lot of restrictions that they're going to discourage any kind of growth of industry or commerce in Spain. We'll see a real rise of inflation here, and Spanish products are really not going to be able to compete with foreign products that are made much cheaper. So once again, with any money that's coming in, it's going to be spent on these foreign goods that are being made abroad, and no money's remaining within Spain. So we're going to see that the Spanish silver is going to be European wide. You'll see it everywhere. It's called Pieces of Eight. If you've seen any like pirate movie where the parrot talks, a lot of times they'll be like, rah, Pieces of Eight, rah. Yeah, that. And what it is it's these silver coins. If you look, the cross on it, that plus sign in the middle of the coin was scored in a way that you could actually break it off, and then you could break it off again into half, so you have a piece of the 8 pieces, and that was going to be one of your coinage. So although Spanish coin is going to be famous world over, and it's going to be used as the means of wealth everywhere throughout Europe, there this price revolution, it doesn't stay within Spain. And actually numerous times Philip II has to declare bankruptcy, and he's not able to pay his debts. So the price revolution is sort of this great phenomenon of increase of precious metals into Europe. At the same time that we have this increase in precious metals throughout Europe, there's also a rise in population due to just more stable food stuff, thanks in part to the Columbian Exchange. And this rise of population back to pre-Black Death levels is going to then lead to a rise in prices as well. So with these two different factors, we're going to see some inflation, but also capitalism in general, greater trade, greater people to produce goods, but also hardships. And those who were wage laborers in the cities, they're going to suffer a lot because they've agreed to a set contractual price, and now that prices are increasing, they can't afford the same quality of life. In addition to that, nobles who've had some kind of set, like lesser nobles who are relying on their rent wage from their peasants. If their peasants now, if they've agreed upon a set wage with the expectation that prices would have remained stable, these nobles are now going to get much poorer. It's going to lead to some unhappiness among them as well. In the face of all these problems, right, Philip II is going to have to declare bankruptcy, which is going to undermine confidence in this government and mean that less foreigners are going to be willing to make those same loans to Spain as they had in the past in future financial problems. Another big challenge for Philip II is his empire's concerns, particularly the challenges of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is going to be a region of Philip II's empire that's converting to Protestantism. And there'll be attempts by Philip II to impose the Inquisition and strict Catholicism on this region. And this is going to lead to, in the Netherlands' point of view, what they call the 80 Years' War. What the Spanish will often describe it as is the Dutch Revolt. And this uprising is going to result in a really costly rebellion for Philip II. The victory of the Battle of Lepanto against the Ottomans is going to lose steam, as he's going to have to really divert all of his energies towards maintaining his own control over his people. As he's trying to fight against these Protestant northern countries. And all the wealth of the New World is really going here. It's Flanders and the Netherlands. It was the industrial center and the trading center for Spain. And now they're also trying to maintain this, maintain any kind of wealth from the New World is used to maintain the war here as well. I think this is an interesting painting that sort of illustrates a period of time. The milk cow is symbolic of the Netherlands itself. It's the source as a cow would be, right, providing so much rich food and nourishment to a family. A cow here is symbolic of the Netherlands as being the source of a lot of the wealth for Spain. And here you have Philip II sitting on top of the cow, trying to bring it under its control again. Meanwhile, Elizabeth of England is feeding the cow. She's trying to sort of promote the rebellion, trying to promote him from trying to get beyond it. You have William of Orange trying to milk the Netherlands. He's really supporting the rebellion, so he's trying to get it going. And then you also see the King of France, who's trying to hold the tail of the cow. And this is symbolic of sort of, he's hoping to profit from Spain losing any kind of control over the Netherlands. So we see here these different, this sort of painting of the situation with the Netherlands and the different groups that are all in favor of this uprising. The English in particular are going to be looking at the Netherlands as one means of undermining the power of Spain, and they have conflict for a variety of reasons. So here you can see the Netherlands during the Dutch Revolt. The United Provinces, those were areas that were primarily Protestant, and they'll end up breaking away in 1580. They get their final formal recognition in 1648 at the end of the 30 Years' War with a different treaty built within the Treaty of Westphalia, the Peace of Westphalia. And so a lot of people in the Netherlands call it the 80-Year War, marking that marks the end of it. In terms of foreign policy for Philip II, the two great enemies for him are going to be England and France. In terms of France, efforts to crush out Protestantism in France and to dominate the French government means that Philip II actually has an interest in trying to create an alliance with Catholic France. However, it fails, and it leads to the Huguenots actually taking the crown of France. Henry IV, we're going to talk about this later, there's a war of three Henrys, and Henry IV, Henry of Navarre, ends up taking the throne of France, and he converts to Catholicism, but he also creates an Edict of Nantes, which allows for religious toleration between the Huguenots, the French Protestants, and the French people themselves. England, as a Protestant area, is really the greatest enemy for Philip II. Philip II had married Mary Tudor with the hopes of turning against the reforms that were made by Henry VIII. When Mary Tudor dies without any heir, the throne is passed on to her stepsister, Queen Elizabeth. Philip II reaches out to Queen Elizabeth requesting her hand in marriage. He feels that he should inherit England because he was married to the Queen of England, but instead she rejects that offer, and from that point forward they become fierce enemies. Queen Elizabeth is actually end up knighting Sir Francis Drake for seizing ships of Philip II, those Welsh galleons. And this angers him, along with her support of the Spanish Netherlands rebellion. He launches his armada against England to really launch an all-out invasion of England. This invasion, the Spanish armada, it gets defeated, and it gets defeated by her own smaller, more maneuverable ships, as well as what was called the Protestant winds, some bad storms that caused a lot of his ships to be defeated. More than half of his ships don't return, and those that do, the sailors that were on them, there's no fresh water for them. A lot of them suffer, and many of them die. So although the Spanish Armada at this point really becomes defeated, it's not the end of Philip II. He's going to continue to wage wars, but this really marks a symbolic decline in Spain. And by the end of Philip II's rule, Spain is no longer this once great power. So at the moment that we have this Spanish Golden Age, it's under Philip II that we see some of the great artists of the time in Spain, and a lot of the religious ideas. We have Ignatius of Loyola, the Jesuits, really founded within this time of religious fervor of Spain. We also will mark it as also the beginning of the end of Spain and its decline among Europe for its inability to grow its economy, as well as its defeat using religious warfare as its motivation. So we'll stop there. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.